A little story from when I was a kid. I was probably about, 5 years old. And my 3 older sisters decided to introduce me to the hula hoop. And it was this big pink hula hoop, right? And I was enough of a boy at that time, I'm like, I'm not doing that. That's a girl thing. But anyways, they got the whole crowd. It was some sort of family gathering. So my aunts and my uncles and cousins and some neighbors were all there. So I had to do it. So I got into the hula hoop and I gave it a big whirl. And I don't know what happened other than it hit me right in the face. And I fell back into the bushes, right? And somehow it got around my head or shoulders or my legs, and it was all kind of like discombobulated, And my dad, he comes up to me. I thought he was going to rescue me. He's like, wait, I got to get my camera. And those were in the days when it wasn't instant. You had to do one of these things. So I'm like this or whatever, for like a minute. And then he takes the daggone picture and puts it up on the refrigerator for the rest of my life. But I tell you this story because, I just thought of it when I was thinking of today. And I think an important component of love is letting people see you as you really are. Even with your entanglements and upside downness. It's letting people see you as you really are. And I thought of that with Peter and Paul and this solemnity. So here's Peter, right? He's a fisherman. And he's impulsive. And sometimes he struggles with trusting in God. Like the walking on water thing. And he denies God 3 times, Jesus, his divinity, that he even knows him. And yet, he becomes the rock upon which Christ builds his church. And then Paul, ferocious preacher and teacher and defender of Judaism in his time, and very wrong in regards to who Jesus is and this new movement of his disciples. And he goes after them, persecutes them, even holds the coats of those who stoned Stephen. And yet, he then becomes the apostle to the Gentiles, to all the non-Jews, to come to Christ. Like, how does this happen? And I think it happens because they allowed Jesus to see them as they really are. And then they realized he still loves them. And so much so that he doesn't want to leave them where they're at. He wants them to go more, further, deeper into who God created them to be, and then he wants to send them to many other people who he wants to have that same experience. He wants them to become disciples, and then he wants to send them as disciple makers. And that's exactly what happened with Peter and Paul. And the foundations of the church, and then the sending of the church. And really, it's what makes me think of you. That's exactly what's been happening here at St. Francis. With all of us, you and me. That we've been letting Jesus see us for who we really are, and let him help us to see ourselves for who we really are. Peter and Paul were not perfect when Jesus met them and called them. They were flawed, and yet he was faithful. And that's what we have been realizing in our lives. He sees us as we really are, with all our upside downness and entanglements and situations we find ourselves in. And then we see that he still loves us. But he doesn't want to leave us there, and he didn't leave us there. And I've been able to see over these 8 years all of the ways in which he has been transforming your life and my life. And then sending us to be disciple makers and to do his work here and out there. And I could think of like 30 minutes of things, right? Of all the ways that you've allowed God to work first in you and then through you. But here's just a few that I've been thinking about. Like how you have facilitated the whole culture of this parish to become a culture of discipleship. And how the hospitality, how welcoming this parish is when anyone comes in. Just feeling that warmth, feeling that vibe, feeling that love, feeling that acceptance. And how God has called us to deeper faith in him, and so many of you have responded to that. And God has inspired us to try anything. And so we've had Alpha, and we've had Rescue Project, and so many of the women are in the Bible studies, Walking with Purpose. A lot of our men are in That Man Is You. Many of you are in other discipleship groups, and you're into the scriptures. Thanks be to God, to Father Mike Smith. So many of you have read the scriptures for the first time in your life. And you're reading the Catechism now, the two most important books that we should read in our lives. Many of you are doing that and on the road to doing that. The Knights of Columbus, right? This great fraternal and service society was just named from this parish the best council in the state of Ohio. And I could go on and on. I mean, think about the school, right? Almost doubled in size and is this far away from being maxed out. And families are coming not just from within the Newark area, they're coming from parts of Columbus and moving to this town in order to send their kids to this school because of the change in the culture and going back to a new, old curriculum called classical education curriculum. And the teachers that are on fire, and the kids and the families there. And our outreach to the poor all across the city. And how generous you are with your time and with your resources to care for people in need. And even just the facilities and the grounds, how over this 8 years you've restored all 5 of our historic buildings and built a brand new building, the Faith and Family Center. Again, I could just go on and on. But I am a proud papa. I'm proud of you. And as with Peter and Paul and so many before me, they were the first priest. God is asking me to step aside and go to another town and to let somebody else be his shepherd here, along with Father Mike and Father Anish, who, by the way, is the nicest priest I've ever met. Father Tom Gardner is coming here as pastor. And as I mentioned about a month and a half or so ago, wonderful priest. I knew him when he was a teenager and started to go to OSU at OSU's campus and joined a household of young guys who wanted intentionally to live in together and grow in their Catholic Christian faith. And then to evangelize others across OSU's campus. They ran all kinds of Bible studies and prayer groups across the campus. And they lived in this house called, even the name is just like awesome. Fort Zion is what they call the household. So It wasn't a fraternity on Fraternity Row. It was fraternity of brothers in Jesus Christ. And I used to go there and do Mass and help with chaplaincy work and, lead them in Bible studies and all that kind of stuff. So that's where I got to know young Tom Gardner. And I could see this fire growing inside of him, and ultimately a desire that God had put into him to want to become a priest. And when he graduated from OSU, then he went into seminary. And I stayed connected to him. One of the summers, as you know, a lot of parishes get seminarians. He came and stayed with me at the seminary, and we really continued to forge our friendship. And I got to be a spiritual director and a mentor for him. And then these last 10 years, his first 10 years of priesthood, I've been able to be a part of his life and just watch him grow and mature as a priest, as a spiritual father, and as a leader, as a shepherd. He has done incredible things at the two churches that he runs out in Coshocton and the school that has been revitalized. He loves having a parish with the school. I could go on and on about him. He's also a good singer. Better than me, which isn't saying much, but he is a great singer. And I just have to say it, he kind of looks like a leprechaun. He does. Wait till you see him. He's got red hair and red beard, and he's got those, rosy cheeks, and he's got that laugh, and he just kind of bobbles around, Please, God, don't tell him I said this. But you are going to absolutely love him, and he is absolutely going to love you. When I first got here, I don't know if you remember this, it was my very first homily, my very first weekend, and I told you a story. And maybe you've heard this in other places, but let's call it the story of the starfish. And I want to do this now as I'm ending my time with you. So this man is walking along a seaside, along a beach. And there's been a great storm the night before. So there's all these starfish that are strewn along the beach, thousands of them. And he sees off in a distance a figure, another man, who's picking these starfish up one by one and throwing them into the sea. And so he eventually makes his way to them and he says, "What are you doing? I mean, you can't hope to save all of these. How in the world do you hope to make a difference?" And the man says nothing. He simply bends down again, picks up another starfish, and throws it in the sea. And then he says, "It made a difference for that one." My prayer is that in some way, some even small way, I've been able, as your spiritual father here, to make a difference in your life. Maybe it's just offering the sacrifice of the Mass for you, or a confession, or a conversation, or a teaching, an insight into the Scripture. Maybe it's some of all these things that we've done together. Maybe it's just that at the right time in the right place, I got to see you and hear you. Maybe it was a hug or a smile, whatever. I just hope that in some small way, I've been able to make a difference in your life, because I know what a huge difference you've made in my life and in my priesthood. Peter and Paul. They weren't perfect. None of us are. I'm certainly not. In fact, they were flawed. And yet God called them. And they said yes. And it changed their life. And then it ended up through them changing the lives of so many others. And I have seen that so clearly happen in this parish, in our school. That you've allowed God to see you. and let you see yourself and see that he still loves you and you can love yourself. And then from that, give your yes and set this parish on fire. I know that that is going to continue. It doesn't matter if I'm here or Father Tom's here or whoever else in these decades that follow. You understand and are growing in that understanding and your response to God's call to discipleship and then disciple anyone else he brings into your life. And for that, God, I'm eternally grateful for being able to be a part of. And I'm going to resurrection. And here's my prayer. And I just humbly ask that you pray for this for me. That God give me the opportunity one more time to fall in love with the people of resurrection the way that I have fallen in love with you. And that maybe they will love me the way that you have loved me so well. I am so grateful. I love you, and I always will. Thank you.